Welcome. Greetings, Jeanne
Thank you,
Wiest.
Peg. Good to be with you.
Yes, and glad we finally got you on the roster here. Now, usually I begin these by mentioning Sister Jeanne, or the present name of the sister, and then they always have a religious name. But you entered at a time when you kept the name that you were given.
That's correct.
That's right. You don't,
Yes.
So you don't have to explain that second name. Because a lot of people knew our sisters by their nun name, and then they don't know who they are now, and they couldn't even tell by the last name.
Right. Well, I would say that, especially early on, I went by a lot of different names because my first ministry was at Siena Heights College coaching women's athletics. So the women tended to call me just Coach.
Oh, right.
And then there was a time when I was teaching at Western Michigan University, and then it was Dr. Wiest. So I find that different stages of my ministry, my time as an Adrian Dominican Sister, people have called me by different names.
Just as long as it's respectful.
That's so
right.
far.
Good. Well, we like to begin with knowing a little bit more about your upbringing. You know, we don't want to spend a lot of time on that. And then we'll go into your ministerial, a few of your ministerial involvements. But just to get to know you and a little bit about your family, if you care to, whatever you'd care to share with us.
Okay. Well, I'm third generation American. My great-grandparents on the Wiest side came from Germany. Unfortunately, I never knew them, but I've seen their grave markers in the cemetery back in Iowa. My mother's side is, my great-grandparents came from Czechoslovakia, and I knew them. My great-grandmother died when I was in my 20s, so I had known them that long. Great-grandma spoke very little English, but she could do a little. And then great-grandpa didn't know any English. So I have both the German side and the Czech side. Although over the years I studied German in high school and college, and I've been to Germany probably a dozen times. So the German side comes through a little bit more than the Czech side. I mentioned Iowa. My parents are both from Iowa. They're from towns that are 5 miles apart. And that's how they met. My mother's father owned a tavern, and Dad would come in there and visit after a long, hot day.
Okay.
And so they were married there. Dad, his first job was at a General Motors plant in Janesville, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So he worked 1 year, got married the next year, and then there was a steady stream of kids after that. I'm the oldest of 5. I have a sister and 3 brothers. The first 4 of us are 13 months apart. And there's, what did I figure out the other day, about 17 months between 4 and 5.
Oh my
So
word.
it's about 5.5 years between
Your dear mother.
me and my baby brother. I was in Wisconsin for 8 years when GM moved us to Northeast Ohio. We lived outside of Youngstown, and we were there 8 years. And then GM transferred my father to the Warren Tech Center, and we lived in Rochester, Michigan.
That's how you got to Rochester.
That's how we got to Michigan. And my 3 brothers still live in the Metro Detroit area. My sister has moved to Florida.
Okay.
Mom and Dad retired back to Iowa in '95. So that's where Mom still is.
Far away from everybody.
Back to my mom's hometown.
Okay, okay. So it's her hometown. Very good. And then where'd you go to school? You went to a few schools. Then
I had a different school every year from kindergarten through 5th grade because of the moving.
You sound like you were Army people, but you weren't Army people. It was people.
Kind of unique to that.
The auto show is in Detroit right now, you know.
Yes, I know. President Biden was there yesterday.
Yeah. Okay.
But I consider myself a GM brat. We went on the assembly lines and picked out cars that we got a new car every year. And Dad was, washing car was our nicest asset, and we couldn't drive until we learned how to wash a car.
Really?
Yes. So
not change a tire.
Oh, we learned that too.
Good.
And check the oil and the tire pressure.
Oh, God, that's great. That's great.
So I went to Catholic school for a few years. A brother went 1 year and didn't do well, so then the boys went to public school, and my sister and I went to Catholic school, and that didn't last too long, having that different schedule. So in 7th grade, I was back in public school, and I have to say I really flourished there. I was in band, and we had a full band.
And was that your first beginnings with music?
Actually, I had
Yeah.
5th grade. We had
Okay.
fourth grade. I had flutophone, and I started playing clarinet in 5th grade.
Okay.
But it was a very small band, not complete at all. All the Catholic schools in the Diocese of Youngstown would come together once a year for a big concert, and that was my experience of a full band once a year. So going to the public school, just playing with a full band, and also they had girls' intramural sports, which I just thrived at. I was kind of the neighborhood tomboy. I was the neighborhood quarterback. I could throw the ball the best, the furthest. So my brothers let me play with them and their
Are
friends.
they sports inclined?
We always played outside back then. 2 of my brothers wrestled in high school, and 1 brother did cross country and track.
Okay.
My sister played the radio. So she's not sports minded at all.
That's amazing. Okay.
So, and then, high school, I was able to go from the same public school, junior high, to the high school, and played varsity basketball 4 years, did track for 4 years. We did move in the middle of my junior year to Michigan, and that was kind of hard because I had everything figured out.
Yeah.
And that's one of the times where God reminds us that we might figure it out, but God has it figured out differently. And that was hard in a way because I only was there a year and a half. Really don't have any high school reunions.
Right.
But I had my music and I had sports to hold me over, and I loved school. Because of when we moved, I really didn't know Michigan colleges well. I had applied to several, but Oakland University was in my backyard. It was 2 miles away.
Right.
So I went there. I played in the band, in the wind ensemble. I played on the women's basketball team. But as we traveled on the basketball team, I decided I really would prefer going into physical education instead of chemistry. So I transferred to Eastern Michigan U and played on not just the basketball team, but also the field hockey team there. I had never seen the sport before I played it, so I guess that's part of my athletic nature coming out.
When did you enter?
I entered in 1980, right after graduation. I graduated
From high
in
school?
April, college.
College.
Yeah. So it was while I was at Eastern Michigan, I was really involved in the chapel there, the Newman
Okay,
Center.
I was wondering how you...
And I was at the University of Michigan for a peer ministry workshop when they had a flyer for Come and See.
Really? So you're a product of Come and See.
So I came to Come and See, and I came and I saw...
Explain what Come and See is.
Come and See is a weekend experience for women interested in religious life.
Okay.
And I had gone to a few others that weren't named Come and See, but they just said, if you're interested, come. And it was such a stark difference here. I had gone to others. I had been to the Oxford Dominicans for a Sunday. And, they talk about everything, show you around, and offer you Kool-Aid and cake. And I had been with the Youngstown Ursulines, because their mother house was close to where we had lived. And I talked to Kalamazoo, St. Joseph's sister. But I guess it was timing. I wasn't going to do anything till I graduated from college. I dated in college.
But you didn't grow up in an environment where there were nuns or you...
No.
Spirituality. I mean, you had your own spirituality, but as far as...
So coming to Adrian and Weber Center, first thing I walked into the garden room, and you see your beer, wine, pop, cheese, pretzels, chips, and I'm going, this place is different. And it wasn't Kool-Aid and cake. It was so much more. But even being with the women, they were so genuine and happy. And so that experience really touched me deeply. I got back to my apartment at Eastern, and my boyfriend called and said, how was it? Because he knew I was looking, but I wasn't really intent on anything. I said, oh, it was wonderful. They did this and they had that. And he hung up on me.
Oh, you got the message.
Yeah. So that was the end of my senior year, part 1. Because of the transfer, I had a 5th year, because I also was in physical education and I needed to student teach. So that fall of my last year in college, I contacted the pre-admissions director, who was Lois Paha,
Okay.
and said, so what's involved in applying? Well, Lois was studying and she was away, so it was like 2 months before someone got with me
Oh my.
and said, well, here's...
It's not like that anymore.
I understand. It was exceptional then, too.
Yes.
But they gave me a packet and said, okay, this is when the pre-admissions board meets, or the admissions board, you need all this stuff. And it was the physical and the psychological testing. So I just went about checking off everything. I think I got it in 2 or 3 weeks before the admissions board met.
Wow.
And it was another come and see weekend. So in the meantime, I really didn't know any Adrian Dominicans. Mary Kay Moran taught at Gabriel Richard, St. Thomas School in Ann Arbor, and part of my student teaching was at Gabriel Richard High School in Ann Arbor. So I would see her occasionally.
Weren't there Dominicans at Gabriel Richard?
Not at the high school when I
Okay,
was there.
okay.
And that would have been in spring of 1980.
Yeah, yeah.
So then I graduated, not knowing. Pre-admissions board met, or the admissions board met, and we were waiting for the general counsel, and it took 2 months for them. And so Carol Joannis called 2 days after I graduated. So I did have a graduate assistantship in my back pocket if the answer was something different. But I guess I was meant to come in August, so...
So you came in August of 1980.
August 3rd.
Okay, okay. And you came here, and how many did you enter? How many else were?
There were 2 others that entered,
Okay.
Cheryl Liskey the first time,
first
and
time.
Pat Donworth, who was
Yes,
a
I do. The name
guitarist.
is familiar. Yeah.
So, yeah, we were together as a group until 6 months before profession. Pat left first, Cheryl left first, and then Pat left. So I was the
Interesting.
only one that ended up making profession out of that group.
Interesting. Okay, I forgot about Cheryl.
Yeah.
All right. So then you had formation here in Adrian, but at that time you got sent out to go to school, to scripture or something.
My first year was as a candidate here in Adrian, and I coached at Siena Heights, the women's cross-country team. That was my ministry.
Okay.
And I assisted with the basketball team. The second year was a study year in Chicago, and I was really concerned because I came out of a science, physical education background and didn't write a lot of papers, different brain use, and CTU did not have a gym. And I thought, how do you have a school without a gym? So I convinced the novice director that I needed a gym, and so I got a pass to the University of Chicago's field house, where at one point I was playing on 3 different basketball teams.
Oh, that was good.
Yes,
good.
it was a great outlet, and it was a good experience. I appreciated the challenge of theology at that time, and it gave me a really good background to go into the canonical year, which was back here in Adrian. And after profession, I actually went to Germany for 2 weeks, visiting our grandmother house in Regensburg.
Oh, lucky you.
I went there and got to know them because I knew the German language, and visited people that I didn't even know but were friends of friends. So it was a wonderful experience. I spoke no English for 2 weeks, so when I got picked up by one of the sisters and she's speaking in English, I said, could you please slow down? I'm not thinking in English right now. I'm still
So you're very
thinking
fluent in German.
My high school German teacher was a native and really emphasized speaking. So I was pretty good. I was rusty when I got there, but after 2 weeks it came back to me. And yeah, so I find when I go back now, I gradually lose it over the years, but some intense study kind of brings it back.
So after you made profession, you didn't stay in. You didn't stay here.
I did. My first ministry was at Siena Heights. I was women's basketball coach, women's track and field, and instructor in physical education.
Okay.
And I stayed there for 4 years. My dream was always to teach in higher ed, and I only had 2 bachelor's degrees. So I had permission to go to Michigan State and get my master's in exercise science and health education. During that study, I did an internship at Oakland University in their Health Enhancement Institute. And
You were here in Adrian and you did that at Oakland University?
I was here in Adrian to coach.
to
And I
coach?
went to Michigan State for my master's, and during the master's degree, I had to
Okay.
do an internship.
Okay.
And I chose to do that at Oakland
Okay.
U. And
Close to home. Or,
actually, yeah, during that summer internship, I went back to my parents, which
Well,
was
good.
interesting
Times
after
were
7
different.
years.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good.
And because of that internship, they hired me. And so I worked there for almost 3 years, and then I got permission to go study for my PhD. I went to Purdue University. They offered me a graduate assistantship, and ended up getting that degree in exercise physiology and health promotion. My dissertation was an epidemiological study of our sisters. I worked with the National Health Interview Survey and used questions from that national survey to our sisters, as well as some other information, and then worked with a demographer from the CDC to compare our sisters' health with their
Demographic.
secular counterparts.
And
Well, there weren't a lot of big differences, but things like our sisters were less likely to be prescribed medication than their secular counterparts.
because,
That wasn't known. That would be future study.
yeah, it
The
wasn't
sisters
because of
were more overweight
I
compared
was
to our
just going to
secular
say, it
counterparts.
wasn't because of exercise, yeah.
Yeah. So there weren't any causes. There could be, you could surmise things,
Yeah.
but it would have been ongoing study had I stayed in that field.
And you chose not to.
Well, I felt like God had called me to do something that I was totally unprepared for and something I hadn't considered, which was to go into parish ministry. So after being a university professor at Western Michigan University, with the spiritual director, I discerned this new call and started over 20 years of parish ministry. Went to Pueblo, Colorado for the first parish.
That's right, and that's where you met Teresa and,
Well, Teresa was here
was here.
as a novice director.
Okay.
And then from there I went to Eagle River, Wisconsin, the North Woods of Wisconsin. I was there for 13 years when the congregation asked me to consider going to Norway, because we had the Filipina
time,
sisters, the Remedy sisters had already merged with us, and they were serving there. So they were looking for a sister that would enjoy ministry above the Arctic Circle. And Attracta Kelly was the prioress at the time, and she said, who wants to go that far north? And everybody said, Jeanne likes cold. So I checked it out.
She didn't ask all of us, did she?
I'm not sure who all she asked,
Okay.
but she asked me.
But you never got there.
No, the Norwegian government denied the visa request because the bishop wasn't offering a living wage.
Wow.
And even though the congregation was willing to supplement that, the government said if this was an important enough position, then the church needed to offer a living wage for that. So then I was out looking again for ministry. I came to Adrian to help with the transportation department. It was in transition at the time, and my car background came in handy, but really missed parish life, so ended up in Minnesota, and just have had different ministries along the way.
As you look back on all your years here in your ministry and your upbringing and everything, what or who was most instrumental and a great mentor to you, and who you are at this point?
Well, I would go back to Joyce Lavoie was the Mother House liturgist when I entered.
Okay.
And she's the one that really got me playing my clarinet here at the Mother House.
Okay.
They didn't have a lot of music written for instruments back then, and if they did, it was for flutes. So I had to transpose the music for the clarinet, which I had learned in high school, and eventually was able to do that on site, so I didn't have to write everything out. But I played for my first 20 Christmases in the congregation. I was here every year for Christmas for 20 years until I got to Colorado. And so just
Now, how did you get all the way out to Colorado?
that was my first ministry in the parish.
In a parish, okay.
But when I was discerning going into parish ministry from higher ed, Marilyn Barnett, who wasn't even yet an Adrian Dominican, she was a St. Joe's sister from Boston.
Right.
We had come across each other at retreats and had become friends, and she discovered, because of my liturgical music, my real love for liturgy, and nurtured that. And so when I looked to go into parish ministry, she really helped me discern that. And again, being in parish ministry, what areas, and that's why I'm in liturgy now, was a lot of her contacts, her mentorship. Yeah, so, and then getting to know the other liturgists here in the congregation.
Now, I'm sure, being a good human being, that you've had some challenges. How do you deal with challenges, or is there one in particular that you really learned from? I mean, you learned from all of them, but one that was more significant than another?
I think when you talk about challenges in my life, I think of athletics, you know, the challenges that are always present in athletics. I bring that same attitude toward life's challenges, is that you can deal with them, you can overcome them with the right preparation, the right amount of fortitude and perseverance. I would say my biggest life challenge was in the parish in Wisconsin, where the pastor had just gone on sabbatical, and we found out that the music director that we had was banned from service in two other dioceses. And that led to him being suspended 1 week and the next week terminated because of the Dallas charter, where if you had a previous conviction of child sex abuse, you were ineligible to work for any Catholic institution. Well, that should have stopped right there, but he kept saying it was like a traffic ticket, because it was not a felony, it was a misdemeanor. And it really, he had groomed the parish to that point. He continued to groom the parish even though he wasn't employed there. And so we had people, you know, the parish was being pulled apart, because it was very charismatic, but very much a sexual predator and a groomer. So it went from an accusation, a previous conviction, to an actual accusation of misconduct with a female in the parish. And that whole thing took 4 years before he was finally convicted and incarcerated.
So you kind of had to work with the parish and try to unify them and
help them to understand and what this was. And you know, you couldn't reveal everything, which is like, if they only knew what I knew, they would understand, and you can't.
So what did you learn about yourself through that experience that we could learn from?
I guess it's, first of all, trust in the process, trust in your own goodness and your intentions of helping others. Some people would question that. I think just the transparency, which is so needed, of people knowing why something is the way it is.
Right, right. All right, now to move away from your busy schedule, I mean, you ought to say, get a song on the road again. You seem like you've been on the road since you were born. But what do you do for fun? What energizes you? Well, besides, I know you're very energetic in your ministry, but what else energizes you?
Well, certainly playing clarinet.
Yes.
I don't play in church now that I work in the church, because I'm usually busy. But I play in community bands. I first encountered community band when I was in Harbor Springs. And I would say since then, in fact, I can go back to Harbor Springs. I went back in August and played with them. I've been playing in the Chemical City Band, where I am now in Midland. But I played with the Minnesota State Band when I was in St. Paul and in New Ulm and Wilmer. I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to make music. And I always say, when I play my clarinet, it's a window to my soul.
Oh, nice.
So I think my favorite place to play is in Holy Rosary Chapel here, but just any time I can play.
Well, you should bring your whatever the clarinet with you and go in there, even though it's not open. I mean, you can get in there.
Right.
We just don't have services in there.
And then I like to be outside. I played basketball until I was 50, and then the knees started saying...
I was going to say, why did you stop?
My orthopedic said, if I keep playing, I probably won't be able to do anything, or else I can quit basketball and do a lot of other things.
Okay.
So when I was in Wisconsin, I picked up kayaking, so I continue to kayak. Backpacking. I don't backpack as much anymore, but I do camp a lot, and I hike a lot. Anytime I can get out in the woods, I try
wonderful.
to go hiking. I have a bike, so I bike, and I cross-country ski and snowshoe. So I try to take advantage of being outside.
But you do work
the
in
scenes.
between all that.
Oh yes,
Just
it's squeezing those in between all the working.
I like to say you're a very competitive person. That's my relationship with you. We used to, if you recall, we did racquetball down at the YMCA when you first entered. And my goal when I ever had to play racquetball with you was just to get 1 point. Because I knew you wanted to have a perfect thing. I thought, I want to get 1 point. I felt I won the game when I got the 1 point.
Well, and I think people think I'm that competitive, but I'm competing against myself.
Yeah, I know, but
it's not so much to put somebody else down or to beat somebody. How well can I play?
No, I said I'll show her. If I could, you'd think I won the game when I got the 1 point, but that was always fun. Anything else you want to share with us that you've not already shared?
It's just, I feel so blessed by coming to Adrian that time, not knowing anybody.
And how you got there is so interesting.
And then the fact that when I got here, made profession in 3 years, and then I made my final profession in 2 years and 10 months because Carol Johannes was finishing her term as prioress, and I wanted to do it before she was out of office. And I thought, I better hurry up and make profession before they figure out who I am, and they can't say no anymore.
What's interesting, how did your family take to this? Because if you hadn't been around nuns, they were Catholic, and they must have heard about nuns.
Yeah, actually my mother's sister was a Rochester Franciscan for a bit.
Okay.
I just barely knew her as a sister, and she left, and it wasn't good terms. They were very upset that she left and kept calling her and making her feel guilty about going back. So there was that, and actually when I told my parents I was thinking of joining here, it was on New Year's Day of 1980, and of course they had been out the night before, and I went to early Mass on New Year's Day and came back, and I said, Mom and Dad, I want to join the Adrian Dominicans. And Dad goes, who the hell are the Adrian Dominican Sisters? So they had never heard of us. I brought my parents to Adrian on Father's Day, a month and a half before I entered, to get to see who we were about. And of course, they had such a warm reception. My dad was the only man in church besides the priest. And so the sisters really picked up on that.
In Holy Rosary.
In Holy Rosary.
Yeah.
And so,
oh, that's nice.
I think, Mom at this point is resigned to the fact this is what I am, but they've benefited a great deal from being with the sisters. And
great people, great people. So that's it. Now we'll do part 2 in maybe 20 years, or you could do it. So there's nothing else you want to share with us?
I think,
you think that's it?
That's a good overview.
Well, thank you, because I always say if you don't tell your story, somebody else will. And we want to get the authentic, true version.
Well, I don't know that can be any truer or more authentic.
Good. So thank you, Jeanne Wiest, for taking the time. And we certainly wish you the luck as you continue on and wherever God is calling you at this time.
Well, thank you, Peg. Appreciate your ministry.
You've touched many lives in all the times you've been with us and even before that. And I especially liked your mother's cookies. Thank you. God bless you.